Well, it is the end of the play-ins, essentially. I'm at Riot Games. I've snuck in essentially with no Broden, just me and Spawn. How's it going, Spawn?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I snuck in as well.
Okay, good.
Yeah, not a writer anymore, freelancer. So, we just made a break for it.
Yes, very good. Well, all this coverage, of course, brought to you by U.GG, my world sponsor. Spawn, talk to me about how play-ins have been for you.
Yeah, plans have been pretty crazy so far. I think there have been a lot of upsets and some pretty sloppy League of Legends, I would say, apart from EDG and G-Rex. And I think people thought that the level was going to elevate. I think that there is now clearly like a definitively good two teams in play-ins, and everyone else is kind of scrapping it out for positions below that.
What do you think of Cloud9 and G2? Because as we speak, G2 has qualified in through kind of a messy series. So what do you think of the West and their appearance, at least in the two dominant or two main regions this play-in?
Yeah, well, I guess, first of all, G2's victory, even though it was a 3-1, was as messy as the 3-2 victory that came out of Cloud9, I think. Overall, I think they would be disappointed in their own performance just because my read on them was that they were stronger than that, both individually and as a team. And they obviously both had some slight meta misreads. I think G2's to a lesser extent, and they were able to fix that a little bit quicker. But I think that they've got some hard work to now go away and do, especially given the strength of groups that they're going to be placed into. It will be a difficult run for both teams now, I think.
And then what do you think of the whole Direwolves moment in plans or their process through this whole thing?
Yeah, well, for an OS fan, that was incredibly disappointed. Not only was Schernfire the MVP of the league, we also do a captain's MVP where all the captains vote on who should be the MVP, and he won that as well. So we're talking about one of the most dominant guys that has ever come back to OS. Then for him to be suspended was bad enough, and then to also come back in and then not be able to pick up the victory really was like a gut punch. But I think that, off the back end of that, Cupcake retiring, it just overall feels like a pretty sad Worlds for OS. I think that we expected more this year because it seemed like we had learnt. We had a big influx of imports come in. We had some good coaches come over as well. So a disappointing result, but also still a young region. Got to look at the bright sides. We have individuals like Triple, like King, showing they can hang with it on the international stage. Biopanther's a rookie. He did a good job as well. So there were some moments, but overall, I cry myself to sleep over it.
It's so sad because I want to be sad for you, but Claky D is in the hallway behind you, making faces at me the entire time. Now he's ducked out because you're gone. But you're telling me how unfortunate things are for OS. And by the way, on Hotline League, we had a caller call in, an Oceanic fan, who was like, "This is the year. I feel like this is the year." And then that news hit, and so it's just it's a difficult situation, I'm sure. But do you feel like there's still is there any good news to take away from playout or plans for Oceania?
Yeah, I think it's that the young players did well. Ubisoft won a game, Biopanther did well. Triple's new to the Direwolves lineup. You guys wouldn't have seen him last year when he was playing internationally. He played well at MSI as well. So it's that we do have talent coming up. It's not like, the old people are just ruling Oceania still. And, the Chiefs losing kind of proved that theory a couple of years ago. So I think that teams will now be more excited to pick up young talent as they come through.
Now, I know you said you feel like we have a solid two teams coming out of plans, but how do you feel about the plans teams as a whole headed into Worlds, right? Because theoretically, these guys should be in the worst situation to make a run for it.
Yeah, and I think they are in the worst situation to make a run for it. I think anyone that is saying, EDG is top 5, I would say even top 7, is kind of, overstating their capability, and I still think they're a cut above G-Rex. So I think, teams like Fnatic in the West, teams like Team Liquid should be able to stand up to these guys fine, and then you got the top 5 of, the other remaining LPL and Korean teams, and then you throw Fongvu in there, all of a sudden you've got a very competitive top of the table. So I think that EDG, G-Rex, whatever group they're placed in, this becomes, once again, a difficult world for them as well. But they have, I think, a better shot at it than the likes of the G2s and the Cloud9s that also came out.
Now, I always love talking to the talent at these international events about what it's like to come and work with all sorts of different faces in the studio, because obviously you have the folks that you get to hang out with and work with back home, but here you end up with Mark Z, you end up with Shux, you end up with all these different folks. So what's it been like for you here at the LCS Studio?
Yeah, honestly, for me, it's great because when I'm back in OS, I'm a play-by-play caster because we only have color casters left, and I host the show as well. So being able to go back to color, which is my traditional role, being able to pick the brains of other analysts and, be able to feed that information back to, our casters back in Oceania, and then for the show to just be like such a neat little package. Like for those that watch the OPL, it's a little bit more gritty, it's a little bit more down and dirty. We don't wear suits. So I think that, coming to a very polished product is always exciting, and it's good to be able to compare yourself to, international standards still and see whether I still can compete on that level as a caster. And I know I've got work to do at the moment, but it's always just great to continue to strive to become better. And the best thing about the team that we bring here is that everyone's kind of bought into that, and everyone is trying to elevate at the same time. Sure.
Now, we are headed into group stage. I don't know if people are making it. We've got a pretty wide lens right now, but people are popping in through this doorway. So if that's the case, it's just the folks working the studio. A lot of action going on here.
Lunchtime.
Yeah, it's lunchtime at, let's see, my clock says 1:30. So, yeah, that's either way. You were headed off to groups, or the groups is about to begin. What is it? Do you have any crazy predictions, any thoughts as we head into group stage?
So I've had a couple. I think that IG will show that they are as good as RNG, and I think Africa will also cement themselves in that top tier bracket. So I think people kind of think right now it's RNG and KT, and I'm quite confident that another couple of teams can join that. Gen G has the potential to be able to do so. People keep talking about their relative weakness in LCK. Wasn't that bad in my opinion, and they were able to win Worlds off the back end of a similar performance. But I do think that right now, if I was going to have a bracket of 4 teams, I would exclude Gen G just by a margin. If that's not brave enough, I would say that I think that Fnatic is good enough to do damage. Having watched Fnatic, I don't think this is the EU hype train coming along. I don't think they're a flash in the pan. I do think that they are genuinely, an upset-worthy team. Does it mean they're going to win Worlds? I don't think so, but can they, challenge for semifinals and the like? I think they can.
Now, I noticed you didn't say anything about any NA teams in that conversation, and that's a little painful to me. We are in Los Angeles, and you just opted to disrespectfully not mention NA. Why is that?
I love watching North American League of Legends, Travis, because it kind of reminds me of Oceanic League of Legends. And as you can see, we haven't done the best at this tournament. Not saying it's going to be replicated. In all honesty, if you want to have a shining light, obviously it's Liquid. I think that they do have fantastic players. Smithy is a person that stands out to me, has always been able to play pretty well on the international stage. So I think there will be shining points for TL, but it's just such a competitive bracket at the top now. And I think that for North American fans, they are expecting that next jump into quarters, into semis. And unfortunately, with the strength of the Chinese and the Korean teams at the moment, I just think that that is a reach.
Now, taking a step back, you mentioned that you think Africa will show up and sort of prove themselves. There's an interesting thing that's happening. I think we were talking about it a little bit on Hotline League. No one seems to be caring or talking about or paying attention to Group A at all, I feel like. And that's probably just because there's not any Western teams in that group. But what's your take on Group A? Maybe you can help add a little bit of hype to a quiet conversation about them.
Yeah, obviously incomplete group so far, but it really does depend what Flash will show up, if that's a group that we're talking about. I think that's A off the top of my head. It's been a long cast. And, then it's so inconsistent in these tournaments because Flash Wolves, you go off their last year performance, you're like, okay, this group is wide open. Then you look at their MSI performance, you're like, wow, door really shut on this group and it's going to be pretty clear cut. I do like your point that there's no, Western teams in there at the moment, so it is being slept on. I also think that it's one of those groups that you will see the first day of gameplay, and if it is super close, everyone will just start talking about it, and that's where the dark horse of the whole tournament will potentially come from. So I think that it's just lack of information. Teams go dark for such a long time around Worlds, and we start seeing these play-in teams and they start generating hype, and then you hear the rumors of scrims, and how they've participated, domestically and internationally previously. It doesn't really hit home how good some of these guys are until you see them play different regions and, either crush or the game be pretty close.
Very good. Well, I do have a flight to catch in roughly 10 hours, but is there anything that you would like to say to any of the fans out there, Oceania fans, Western fans, anybody out there?
Yeah, I'll say, g'day, mate. We weren't here to put boots on caterpillars, but unfortunately we fell short, so, that one's on us. But I'm sure Oceania will keep trying to get back to where they were and represent our region with pride, and I'm just really happy to be here. Thanks for the interview.
Well, thank you so much for the interview. Best luck next year for your region, but looking forward to seeing all the hype that's going to be coming in on groups in just a little bit. For everyone else, you can check out the rest of my coverage of all things Worlds right here on my YouTube channel.
Well, I am leaving in a couple hours with Broden, but I realized that I did these interviews and then didn't film an outro at all, so now I'm just doing that from my office. I'm really excited about this trip, and I want to thank u.gg for sending me on it, because, yes, I got those interviews from the studio, but that's all I'd be doing if it wasn't for them helping to send me over to Korea. So we're going to be getting those to you soon. Again, thanks u.gg, and be sure to check out the links in the description below so that you can support them, maybe follow me on Twitch, do whatever. All that and more coming up soon with Worlds.